Yes. Okay, we are live. Very well. So now we will continue our Mahabharata character series. We've just finished Yudhishthira Maharaj. We did that in a two-part session because we don't want to rush through it. And today we'll be discussing the topic of Dronacharya and his life and pastimes and various things that we can learn from his life. And we'll also we'll go through other topics that are quite controversial as well. So I'll now begin the kirtan, and with the blessings of all the senior Vaishnavas in the call right now, online right now, I'll start. Namam Vishnu Padhaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gokulananda, Radha Gokulananda, Radha Gokulananda, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Shri Radhe. Jaya Panchatattva, Panchatattva. Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva. Panchatattva, Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Nitya Gaura, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura, Hari Bol. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Jag ki Jai. Hare Krishna Mantra ki Jai. Haribol. So now, with the blessings of all the senior Vaishnavas in the call, we will begin discussing the character and the psychology of Dronacharya and understanding the main thing about revenge and the concept of revenge from the Mahabharata. So before we start, we'll take the blessings of the senior acharyas. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naran Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayam Mudhirayet.
Tato Jayam Mudhirayet.
So today's character is Dronacharya, and he is the guru of the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and he plays a fundamental part in the Mahabharata because he's there from the present, from when the children are present and throughout the whole war, and he dies on this 15th day of the battle. And he plays a very important role in the development of the character of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And it's important to learn, there's many lessons that we can learn from his life because he is also a great devotee. And so the first important thing that we need to know is that when we point out so-called mistakes or flaws in characters, for example, especially in Bhishma Dev's class, a lot of the questions came through were often, if Bhishma Dev has made this many mistakes, how is he a great devotee? The point is that we learn these mistakes. Chanakya mentions in his nitis, the important point is when we learn, ordinary people make mistakes all the time. We all make mistakes. Error is human. And so the mistakes of great people are what we can learn from because they are so great. And so it's important to focus on these great mistakes. But just because they've made mistakes like this doesn't tarnish their reputation at all. Because the ultimate point to remember is that whatever happens by the desire of the Lord. And Mahabharata plays out the way it did because the Lord wanted to carry out his desire of removing all the unscrupulous kings. So Dronacharya is a very, very great devotee of the Lord, actually. And that's very important to remember while we discuss this. So Drona, what is Drona? Drona is actually a pot which is often used for collecting somaras in Vedic sacrifices. This is called the Drona. And because he was born from this pot, he's called Dronacharya. This is the name that's given to him. And it's important that we learn a little bit about his lineage. He's the son of Bharadvaj Muni. Bharadvaj Muni is a great devotee, great rishi, and he spent a lot of time in the ashram of Valmiki Muni. And So he plays a fundamental role in Ramayana, in Treta Yuga, and he's also present in here in Dwapara Yuga as well for a long time, and then he passes away, leaving Dronacharya on his own. But he's a very great devotee of Lord and a very great saint. And Dronacharya is his son, and so he's got that sort of background, that sort of parenthood, and he becomes later. We'll get to it as well later. He marries the sister of Kripacharya, who's Kripi, and they go on to have a son called Ashwatthama. So often it's actually described that his birth was an accident. Actually, Bharadwaj Muni unnecessarily released his energy after being tested by an Apsara, and this energy was collected in that pot, the Drona, and because he's born of a Drona, he's given this name Dronacharya. And he's technically a Varna Sankara, technically, if you look at a very material level, unwanted progeny. And it's very important to understand that, people always say, this Varna Sankara generally in Vedic society is unwanted and undesirable. And people often diminish their sort of standard or social status. But Dronacharya nevertheless was a very, very fundamental part of the Mahabharata and also very elevated himself. And so the most important story that we have to start with is Dronacharya's childhood. As a child, he went and studied under Shantanda Muni, and he studied in that Gurukul along with Drupada, who was also a king. He was a king of Panchal region, and they both went to school together. And at the time, when one's in school, no one looks at, especially in primary school, no one looks at one else's physical appearance. No one really cares about social status or socioeconomic class. They just look at each other as friends. And because they were both in Gurukul together and they studied together, Drona and Drupada became very, very close friends. Even though Drupada was technically from a not so prosperous background, and Drona was from a not very prosperous background, and Drupada himself was from a very prosperous background. And so, out of childhood affection, Drupada said, to Drona, I promise you, we will always be friends, and whatever I have, is yours, and whatever you have is mine. And actually, I promise that I'll give you half of my kingdom. And this is a sort of childhood promise that Drupad gives to Dronacharya in Gurukul when they're very, very young. And then as life moves on, Drupada goes back and he ends up ruling the kingdom of Panchala and taking control. And Dronacharya goes into the forest and he becomes very poor and very poverty-stricken. And he remembers this one promise that Drupad said to me, when he becomes king, he will give me half of his kingdom. So definitely he will be there to help me if I need that sort of help. He will always help me. And he kept this in the back of his mind, and he was very reliant on this promise as well. And he had a young boy, Ashwatthama, from Kripi. And Ashwatthama, he neighed like Uchaishrava, the celestial horse. He neighed like that. So that's why he's given this name Ashwatthama. Ashwa in Sanskrit means horse. And Ashwatthama is born, and they don't even have enough money or wealth to provide milk for Ashwatthama. Just simple cow's milk. And it's said that in Mahabharata, some people, some commentaries and now TV serials or whatever will depict that actually Ashwatthama, some other people mixed wheat flour and water and gave it to him as milk. But actually, Dronacharya himself used to mix the wheat flour and water and present it as milk to Ashwatthama because he was too embarrassed to say that we can't afford milk. And so actually he was instilling that sort of, that concept that this is milk, now you should drink like this. And he became very disheartened. And Ashwatthama was not himself ridiculed, but it was Dronacharya's own mind. In his own mind, he came up with the thought that, okay, I should go to Drupada and get at least something that can help me sustain my family. And so he goes to Drupada, he goes to the kingdom of Panchala as a sort of very poverty-stricken Brahmana. with ragged clothes, and he goes into the royal assembly and he says, "My dear friend Drupada, remember we were once kids, and you promised me that you will give me half of your kingdom when you become king. I don't want half of your kingdom because I'm a simple brahmana, but all I want are 2 cows, just 2 cows, so I can sustain a living, and I can also get these milk products because, as we mentioned in a last class, I think the cow is ultimately source of food because from milk you can get yogurt and then ghee, and from ghee you can then use that for sacrifices, which are very important to brahmanas, and from those sacrifices one can obtain food. And so he simply asked for 2 cows. That's all I want. And Drupad laughs at him and ridicules him and embarrasses him and says, "Look at you. You're just a poor saint that's wandering around in these ragged clothes, and you're coming to me as a king. Look at the opulence I have around me. Who are you to be friends? Friendship is there between equals. We're not equal. I'm much superior to you. Whatever I said as a kid doesn't matter. You go back into the forest and do your own Brahminical duties and leave me alone." And he became very disheartened, but more than disheartened, enraged. And he thought, I will get revenge on Drupada. I will get revenge. When someone doesn't help you when you most need it, then you become enraged and tormented. And this one thought just took over his mind. I need to get revenge on Drupada. How can he ridicule me like that? Simply 2 cows I was asking for, and he ridicules me like that. For this, he just becomes so angry and frustrated, and he leaves. And this anger actually plays out throughout the whole of the Mahabharata. And this simple asking of 2 cows is fundamental. In a sense, it's a seed of the war, the Kurukshetra war, and we'll explain that later. But this is the important point, that firstly, when we look out in material world, we are social beings. Humans are social beings, and we need friends. And if the friendship is based on a material level, then that friendship won't bring any prosperity. Because if one just looks, okay, I'm a king, you're a king, let's be friends, even though just as equals, that none of that friendship will prosper or provide anything great because the Lord is not in there. The Lord is not the center of that friendship. Firstly, friendship, often parents even nowadays will say, hang out with your equals. Don't hang out with them because they're very wealthy, and then you might start asking for cars like that. You might start asking for, iPads and iPhones, and we can't afford it. So even nowadays, people often say, friend, hang out with your equals, be mates with those types of people. And the point here is, firstly, Dronacharya is very learned, and he's a Brahmana. And so he should have known prior to this incident itself that friendship often will be there between equals, and asking for such like going into the royal assembly in public and asking often doesn't provide such fruit. Firstly, he should have gone in private and asked, and secondly, he should have realized that friendship is between equals. I'm not justifying Drupad's act, by the way. Drupada has his own story that we can go into, but this point is there, that friendship you should bear between equals, or friendship, the purpose of a friendship, or it should be situated around the Lord. The Lord should be the center. Because as soon as the Lord disappears from a friendship or relationship in general in the material world, that relationship only brings misery. And this friendship can be contrasted in a sense with another friendship in the Mahabharata, that of Duryodhan and Karna. Duryodhan is often there as the sort of the boss in that friendship, the alpha, if you like. And Karna is always just a yes man. He's just hyping him up, just saying, yeah, this is a great idea. Yes, that is a great idea. That sort of friendship is dangerous as well, because flattery and gossip, so in a sense, this friendship is often a symbol of gossip and revenge. Flattery and gossip are like 2 sides of the same coin. When one flatters you, they often say things that they wouldn't say behind your back to your face. And they often praise you and boost your ego. And when one gossips about you, they'll say things behind your back that they would not say to your face. So they're 2 sides of the same coin. And one is just as bad as the other. So either a friendship based on gossip or flattery, none of these are correct at all. That's why we mentioned, unlike these two friendships, Vidura is a true friend. If you go and watch that again, you'll remember the whole concept of Vidura was that he's a real friend because his aim was to go, even when Dhritarashtra didn't care, he went back to Dhritarashtra and went and made sure that he became liberated. That's the correct friendship. So Drona leaves the place, and he's enraged, and he makes it his desire that I want to get revenge on Drupada. I want to get revenge. And it's important to realize that actually, just because, we'll get into this again later, just because one is born as a Brahmana, one may have Brahminical qualities. Just because one is born in a certain caste doesn't mean that they are that caste. And that's a really, really important point, especially in today's society, and I'll get back onto that again. But this sort of thought provokes him to become very angry, violent, and act rather than a Brahmana, but more as a Kshatriya, just because of this one thought. Just this one thought. He has very Brahminical qualities, but that one thought turns him very violent. And so he keeps that in the back of his mind the whole time. And then now he's looking for a job. He's looking for something to do. He's looking for a way of sustaining his life. And one day, as he's wandering in these forests, there are Pandavas and Kauravas are playing there as very young children. This is before all the animosity and the war began. They're just young children, they're playing there. And they're playing with a ball, and they throw the ball, and that ball lands in a well. And then they're thinking, oh no, we can't get the ball. Even nowadays, we play football in the garden every now and then, and the ball goes in the neighbor's garden, and we think, oh no, we lost the ball now, what can we do? So in the same way, they're thinking, oh, we've lost the ball now, what are we going to do? And so they see that Dronacharya is there, they see a sage is there, they don't know who he is. And they think, okay, we'll just ask him just in case he can help. So they go to him and ask, can you help us get our ball out? Just like when we lose the ball in the bushes, and we'll say, oh, I can't reach the ball, can you go and get the ball out of the bush? So in a similar manner, they ask. And so he says, okay, I'll do it, but I just need some blades of grass, some long blades of grass. So Yudhishthir Maharaj, well, not at that time, not a king, but Yudhishthir and Bhim and Duryodhan, they go and they get so many blades of grass, and they just get a bundle. And then Dronacharya, he chants mantras, and he drops the blade of grass, throws the blade of grass like a dart almost into the ball, so that pierces the ball. And then with more mantras, he puts the blades of grass and he connects them. One pierce each blade of grass, piercing each other blade of grass, and then he pulls out the ball from the bottom of the well. And the whole of the Kauravas and Pandavas, they're young children, to see such a feat, they become so astonished and they become so happy, and they're so excited, and they get the ball back. And Yudhishthir Maharaj, he runs inside to the palace, and he tells Bhishma Pitama, at that time he's thinking, look, we were losing our ball like this, and then the sage came and he connected these blades of grass with mantras, and he pulled out this ball. And Bhishma immediately realizes, okay, the identity, I know who this person is. This is no ordinary person. This is Dronacharya himself. And so he goes and he asks Dronacharya, please, can you teach the Kurus, these young children, please, can you teach them? We need them to go to a Gurukul, and you'd be a perfect guru. And Dronacharya says, yes, I can teach them. I can teach them martial arts and the study of warfare. And I'll also teach them other things as well. But Drona says one thing, and because he's a Brahmin, he can't lie. He's often very genuine like that, Brahminical nature. He says, there's one thing I have though. As soon as I finish teaching them, I want them to fulfill my one desire. What is that desire, Bhishma says? I want them to kidnap Drupada and capture him, bring him to me as captive. And so Bhishma is thinking, oh no, I don't want to start another war with Panchalas, because in the Mahabharata, there's a history given that Kuru Panchalas, these two kingdoms, they never get along. There's like a long enmity between these two. And he's thinking, I don't want to start a war again between us. But because Dronacharya we need right now urgently someone to teach all these kids, because they're just messing around now and they're of the age to study. I'll accept your request. And so they go and study under Dronacharya. And the fundamental point, or the criticism, if you would like, of Dronacharya's character, in a sense, is that because of this one desire, he ends up teaching primarily martial arts and warfare. If you look, whenever you read Mahabharata or you hear about Mahabharata, people say Dronacharya is the guru of the Pandavas and Kauravas. He taught them. But a normal guru doesn't just teach warfare. A normal guru, regular guru, will actually teach material things, how to live in this world, but also they will teach knowledge about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But for some reason, Dronacharya never taught anything to do with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or anything to do with morality at all. He simply taught archery and warfare in general. And how you might think, how does a Brahmana knows that? A Brahmana knows warfare? Why would a Brahmana know that? Brahmana's duty is not war; it's studying the Vedas. So he actually went to Parshuram after he got embarrassed and ridiculed by Drupada, and he went to Parshuram and he said, "Parshuram, my dear Lord, I've lost everything. I don't have anything. I need to sustain my livelihood. Please give me something." And Parshuram says, "No, I gave everything on this. I gave to Kapil Muni, and all of the whole planet now belongs to him. I don't have anything left with me, but I have this science of warfare that you can learn." So Dronacharya learns that, and he teaches that knowledge to the Pandavas and Kauravas. But he does not teach the knowledge of Supreme Personality of Godhead. He also teaches a little bit of politics, and that's it. And it's really, really important to understand that that's not what's important in life. What's important in life is knowledge about Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because Dronacharya only taught them martial warfare and military science, because the Pandavas were raised by Kunti in a very Krishna-conscious and dharmic manner, they became dharmic and they followed dharma. And because the Kauravas were raised by Gandhari and Dhritarashtra, and they were often pampered, and often they let them do whatever they want, because parents' duty is not necessarily to teach about Supreme Personality of Godhead at that time. That time it used to be Guru who would teach that. So they left that and they just pampered their children, and their children became very adharmic. So in a sense, the warfare, the whole of this 18 days war of Kurukshetra, you could say that one sense Dronacharya is the cause of that war. Because if he taught them the correct principles of dharma and adharma and knowledge about the Supreme Lord, then surely the Kauravas would have become dharmic and there would be none of this warfare. So on a material platform, the mistake that he made is that he did not teach about the Supreme Lord. And knowledge about the Supreme Lord is the only king of knowledge. All of the other knowledge is useless. If you learn all the other knowledge materially and you don't know this one thing about how one can devote their life to Supreme Lord, then it becomes useless. If one knows both material knowledge and then knows as well how one can devote their life to Lord, then that material knowledge only becomes useful because they will apply in a correct manner. So that's a very, very important point that we learn from Dronacharya. And it's also important that we understand how Drona taught. He's training Kshatriya, so obviously he has to teach them how to fight. Nothing of that is wrong. That's what you're meant to do. Because of Dronacharya, Arjun became a great archer. And without that, it would have been not possible. And that's Kshatriya's duty to fight. But because he did not teach the most important knowledge, did not lead to the cultivation of dharmic principles in that Kshatriya race. The important point to understand about Varnashram here is that Brahmana's duty is to tell others about the Lord. That is the end of the duty of the Brahmanas. The main duty of the Brahmanas is to teach others about the Lord. That is their main duty. Brahmanas also, they should learn military science. It's mentioned that they should. Why should they? Brahmanas, they're just doing fire sacrifices and they're reciting mantras and reading. Why should they learn? And that's because in an emergency, if there is a problem or if there's a situation where they need to, then they can use their warfare. But Brahmanas don't generally need warfare because they have mantras that they can do the same things with. Just like one tries to kill with weapons in a war, Brahmanas have mantras that can do the same thing. So Brahmanas should, the main thing that they should do is to tell others about the Lord and to teach about Vedas. Not just materialistic, but also spiritual. And the same thing applies for Kshatriyas. Now, if a Kshatriya just goes and learns warfare and nothing else, he becomes tyrannical. He becomes completely dictatorial. And he doesn't care for feelings of others and empathy. He doesn't care for what's right or wrong. He just experiences his nature, because that is a Kshatriya nature. That one just does, and they act quite simply and straightforward and angrily. And they quickly react to things. That's their nature. So the same way, if a Brahmana does not have Kshatriya principles also within the Brahmana understanding, then it was very difficult to survive potentially if there is an emergency situation. Similarly, if the Kshatriyas do not have the correct Brahminical understanding on the inside, then they will become tyrannical. So actually, in reality, both of these things have to be together. One has to be Brahminical on the inside, and for a Kshatriya, one has to be Brahminical on the inside, and they have to sort of, to the outside world, they have to pretend or put on the outward sort of garment of a Kshatriya. And the perfect example of this is not actually in the Mahabharata, but it's in the Ramayana. The perfect example of this is Dasharath Maharaj. He was a great warrior, Dasharath. He used to fight as if 10 charioteers are fighting at once. But at the same time, he had the heart of a Brahmana. And on the inside, he was very dharmic. So this is how one should live. And so that takes us on to this point about Varnashram, the castes. How is it fair that, okay, if one is born of a Kshatriya, so-called Kshatriya, then they should take up the administrative class and rule the country. If one is born of a Brahmana or a teacher, that they become another Brahmana. How is that fair? The principle often is that a tiger gives birth to a tiger, right? And this is what people, even nowadays, they'll use that as a argument for the caste system. However, the important thing is, a doctor's son does not necessarily become a doctor. Just because you are a doctor doesn't mean that I'm now a doctor automatically because you're a doctor. Just because a Brahmana gives birth, or the Brahmana family has a child, doesn't mean that they will become a Brahmana. For example, you're interested in chemistry, and because you're interested in chemistry, you've given me a natural interest in chemistry as well, because that's what you're interested in, as a basic example. So that means that often someone who's a Brahmana, because they practice Brahman-like things, when they have a son or a daughter, they will also put them through Brahminical practices in general. However, this is not a fixed, frozen system, and that's the really, really, really important point to take home. Often now, especially nowadays, people use in India the caste system as a sort of, I'm an upper caste, you're a lower caste, so I can do this, you can do that. The government will use it to say, okay, this is what caste you are, this is what defines you. But in Vedic system, that is not at all the case. Actually, there are so many examples where one can see that Brahmanas a Shudra or someone born in a Shudra family is actually becomes a great Brahmana. And sometimes kings will have sons and daughters, and they will go and meditate, and they become Brahmana. They're Kshatriyas, but they can become Brahmana. And sometimes as well, Brahmanas will have children, and they will act like such tyrants, or they will act completely adharmically, and they are considered no worse than not even a Shudra, because Shudra doesn't act tyrannically. So they're considered even worse than Shudra. The point is, of Varnashram society, these Varnas are given based on character rather than birth. It's a fluid system. The point is, it's not frozen. So what is completely misunderstood and twisted, the caste system is completely twisted now. It's completely wrong. If a Brahmana is using their birth and they're saying, okay, I'm a Brahmana, that means that I'm better than you, or I'm higher, or I'm privileged than you. That's completely incorrect. They're not at all Brahmana, because Brahmana will have the characteristics of Brahmana. In 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there's some verses that give that example that Brahmana is cleanliness, he's like this, and he's very genuine, etc., etc. Or the Kshatriya is administrative, and the Vaishyas, their main duty is to take care of the cows and do farming and business. and the Shudras, they'll just support the other three sections of society, and that's what their duty is. But that doesn't mean that just because one is taken birth in a Brahminical family, he becomes a Brahmana, right? For example, you can take many, many examples in scripture. Shabari, she's a tribal woman, but she's actually great. She's more elevated than the Brahmanas themselves. And like other examples, like just because one is born in a demoniac family, they don't become demon. Just Prahlad Maharaj, Vibhishan. Just because one is born in an animal family doesn't necessarily like etc. Like Vanaras, they're not even human. They're subhuman in a sense, but they are very much more. Hanuman, for example, is much more elevated than many Brahmanas. So the point to understand is Yudhishthira Maharaj actually gives a lot of examples when he's answering Yaksha's questions of how a Brahmana is not born as a Brahmana, but he becomes a Brahmana by the qualities and characteristics. The character is what defines you, not your birth. That's really, really important to understand, and it can't be understressed at all. Because now the caste system is twisted completely misused. And this is not what Vedic society had. And now often people use that example that, why do we study Mahabharata or Ramayana? These things that they were backward times, these things are from ancient civilizations that couldn't maintain good society. Actually, no, the complete opposite is there. Because we've taken Vedic understanding and people nowadays have twisted it and manipulated it so that they can fulfill their needs, that's where the problem arises. So these Varnas are not frozen, but they are fluid. One can move. Vishwamitra was a born Kshatriya. He was born as a king, and he had those kingly qualities. And because of those qualities, he would be defined as a king. But over time, he actually progressed and he developed his internal character by introspection and character. He developed his own character, and he ended up becoming a Brahmana. This is a perfect example that it's the character of a person, not the external appearance that gives them their Varna. But I've said that maybe like 5-10 times, but that's the important point to understand. And another controversy that comes with Dronacharya in a similar sense to do with this is the story of Ekalavya. So I'm just going to quickly narrate that. Ekalavya is a tribal. He's the son of a tribal king. I think Hiranyadushana. And he's the son of a tribal king, and he's often, he comes to Dronacharya and says, please teach me. And Drona says, no, I won't teach you. I can't teach you. And the reason externally he gives is you're not a Kshatriya or Brahmana. Those are the only two I teach. I don't want to teach you. And so Ekalavya goes and he's disheartened, and then he makes an effigy of Dronacharya, and then he starts worshipping that effigy or that idol, deity if you want, but he makes a deity out of mud and he starts worshipping and he starts practicing archery in front of the deity. And then one day the Pandavas and Kauravas are in the forest and they hear a dog barking very loud, and they think, oh, the dog's barking like very loud and it's not perfect for our target practice right now in archery. And then for some reason it just stops. The barking ceases completely. And then they see a dog that comes in front of them, running in front of them. That mouth has been sealed with 7 arrows, but there is no blood coming from the mouth. And so Arjun especially, he's shocked because Arjun thinks that he's one of the best archers at the time. And he's shocked. He thinks, wow, who has some skill like that in archery? And so as they carry on moving in the forest, they see Ekalavya and they see he's practicing. And Ekalavya sees Dronacharya and he runs to Dronacharya and goes to his feet and says, my dear Guru, can you please thank you so much for your teachings? And Dronacharya is confused. What have I taught? And then Ekalavya explains that I've been worshipping you and doing my practice before you, and that's why I've got so good. And they understand that this is the Ekalavya who's sealed the dog's mouth. It's this person. And then Dronacharya says, okay, now I'm your teacher. I need some reward. I need some, no, not reward. What do you call it? Token of respect. I need some Guru Dakshina. I need some sort of, you need to give some sort of something as respect because I've taught you. And so Ekalavya says, yeah, I'll give you anything you want. And Dronacharya says, cut off your right thumb. Give me your right thumb. The thumb that you use to pull the bow back on the, sorry, pull the bowstring back when firing an arrow. I want that thumb. And Ekalavya is disheartened completely. And he cuts off his thumb and he gives to Dronacharya. And he loses his ability of fighting. And everyone thinks, oh my God, how could he do like this? A lot of serials, even nowadays, they think, just like Karna's put as a tragic hero. Similarly, Ekalavya, he was going to become the best archer in the world, but then Dronacharya did this to him. How could he do like that? Important thing to understand is, firstly, Ekalavya he was not rejected not for being not Kshatriya or Brahmana, but because Dronacharya, as a Brahmana and a great devotee, could see on the inside that he had some dangerous desires. And that what he wanted to do with fighting was to go and conquer other kingdoms and terrorize other people. And so he thought, okay, I'm going to have to say no. But that will be too harsh if I say no, like, no, because you're basically very demoniac. So as an external reason he gave, no, I can't teach you because you're not Kshatriya or Brahman. Secondly, it's important to understand that Ekalavya is a tribal, and in his tribal kingdom, they would often terrorize the sages of the forest, and scare them, frighten them, and often attack them unnecessarily. So it's not dharmic at all, and he wouldn't have been able to, Dronacharya would not want to teach someone who's completely going against dharma. And the third thing is that Ekalavya is actually not just a demoniac mentality, but he's actually a demon. Ekalavya fights against Krishna 17 times. He joins forces with Jarasandha, and he goes and attacks Krishna 17 times. And every single time he's defeated there by the Lord. And in the end, Ekalavya is killed by Lord Krishna because of his demoniac mentality, because he's acting as a demon only. So the reason Dronacharya didn't teach him is because he did not want to cultivate such a dangerous demon, more dangerous than the Kauravas would have been. And so that's the reason that he asked for the thumb to be cut off. And also, in the Vana Parva of the Mahabharata, Udyoga Parva of the Mahabharata, Krishna explains to Arjun, I have defeated various people that would come in your path, like Ekalavya and Jarasandha and etc. etc. He explains to Arjun and Yudhishthira Maharaj. And I've removed these people because they would have been people that would have gone against Dharma. Powerful people that would have gone against Dharma. And so actually whatever happened is that Krishna, as the Paramatma in the heart, gives Dronacharya the idea of asking for Ekalavya's thumb to be cut off. So that's the reason that whole event happened. And so, okay, now Dronacharya teaches the Kurus, and then he trains them up, and then he says, okay, now your training is done, and then he puts on an exhibition. And that exhibition is not relevant for now because we talk about it in other parts like Karna and Arjun. That's when Karna meets Duryodhana. So that exhibition happens. And after the exhibition, he says, now I want you to fulfill my one desire. And he narrates the story of how Drupada mistreated him. And then he goes, he sends the Kauravas. Duryodhana says, 100 Kauravas, we will do it. There's 100 of us that you've trained very nicely. We'll take Karna and we will go and capture Drupada. And they go. And Drupada and his army and the Panchal army they completely annihilate Duryodhana's forces. And they completely demolish him. Karna runs away. Duryodhana is captured. And they take the army of Hastinapur. They not only go as 100 Kauravas, but they take the army, the national army. And so then, after that, the Pandavas, they go and firstly free Duryodhana and the other Kauravas, and then also to capture Drupada. And unlike the first attempt, they don't take the army. They go only 5 people. Only the 5 Pandavas they go. And they completely defeat the entire Panchal army. And there's a wonderful description given of that fighting. But the important point to realize is Drupada is captured and he's brought in front of Dronacharya. And Dronacharya says, so as you can see, these great kings and archers and bowmen and mace warriors, all of these great warriors I have trained. And they are greater than you. So I think now we can be friends because I'm, if not equal to you, I'm now superior. And so in a sort of sarcastic manner, Dronacharya forgives, he sort of says this to Drupada, but on the inside he forgives. because that is his Brahmanical nature. But then Drupada, he goes and now he's enraged. 5 people, young boys only, they've just finished school and they defeated my entire army. And so he comes up with 2 desires. First desire, I want a son that will be the end of Dronacharya, that will kill Drona. And the second desire, I want a daughter who can marry Arjun. Because Arjun's way of fighting was, even though he captured me, his way of fighting was so beautiful to watch. He's a proper showman. So I wish that I had these 2 desires. And so he arranges a fire sacrifice and goes through a lot of misery in order to, like, a lot of pain and suffering. And there's a massive description of how he has to prepare for that sacrifice. But in the end, from that fire, 2 people come out. And the first one is an illustrious warrior, the son. And he's called Drishtadyumna. And his purpose of his life is to kill Dronacharya. And the second is Draupadi, actually also known as Krishna. And she also comes out of this fire. And so Draupadi becomes very happy. And he's rejoiced that now he has the children. And now he knows for certain that his son will kill Dronacharya. So he becomes very happy. And so then there's a lot of other things that Dronacharya does. But I'm going to go to the other main part of Dronacharya's chapter, which is the Drona Parva of the Mahabharata. After Bhishmadev falls down on the 10th day of the battle, Drona takes over as commander. And he fights violently and aggressive. And he's very, very, again, obviously, because he's the one who is the teacher of the Kauravas and Pandavas. So he knows this military science very well. And he goes and fight, and he's fighting. And on the opposite side, of course, are the Pandavas, and Drishtadyumna is there on that side as well. And fast forwarding through he does very, very important things, but the most important one I want to touch on is his way of going, his departure, how he's killed. He goes in there. I'll get to that. That's there on the 12th day. That he ends up killing Abhimanyu. It's his idea to 6 versus 1 Abhimanyu, even though Abhimanyu is only 16. So my age, actually, Abhimanyu is only 16, and he's fighting. And then 6 big great warriors, they go and gang up and brutally murder him. That's actually Dronacharya's idea, but I'll come to that later. But he's now fighting ferociously, and Bhim thinks, okay, I can't have this. Like, we got rid of Bhishmadev, and now Bhishmadev was our biggest threat, but I didn't think Dronacharya would be such a big threat. So then he comes up with this plan in his mind, okay, because Bhim's thinking, okay, now I have to find a way, or at least if I can't physically sort of diminish him, I have to go and attack the mental. I have to go and attack him mentally on another level, so that when he's feeling low, he doesn't fight as well. And so he thinks, okay, there's this elephant here who is on the Kaurava army, and there are many chariots he's acting very dangerously towards us. I'll kill this elephant, and this elephant is called Ashwatthama. And then I will go to Dronacharya and tell him Ashwatthama, his son, is dead. But I won't say his son. I'll tell him that Ashwatthama is dead, and he will think that it's his son. And so Bhim goes and he kills the elephant, and then he tells Dronacharya, Ashwatthama's dead. Stop fighting. You're a Brahmin. Why are you fighting in a war? What's all this nonsense you're doing? Brahman's duty is not to fight. Brahman's duty is to teach. You should go into an ashram now. Get off the war. Get off this war field. We don't need your nonsense here. Why are you killing so many innocent people? And then Dronacharya, he becomes enraged. Not because he thinks Ashwatthama's died, but he thinks, I know Ashwatthama's not dead. I think, how can you lie to your own guru? How can you speak so ill of your own guru? And some people, they will twist their commentary and say, like, Dronacharya was a very mean teacher. I have, like, just like you've had bad teachers in your past, and I've had bad teachers in my past, and Bhim's taking some revenge on his bad teacher. This is not at all true. Bhim's thinking tactically for the war. And Dronacharya, in that 4 or 5 minutes, he kills around about 40,000 soldiers in that fit of rage. And Bhim thinks, oh no, what have I done? Instead of reducing, now he's fighting even more. And so he's thinking, okay, then I have to truly convince him that Ashwatthama is dead. He's not going to take my word for it, but he'll take Yudhishthira's word for it. And at that time, Krishna takes his chariot towards Yudhishthira, and he knows the desire of Bhima because he's Paramatma in the heart. And he says to Yudhishthira Maharaj, go and tell Dronacharya that Ashwatthama is dead. And Yudhishthira is saying, no, this is not the truth. And Krishna says, just go and tell him. And so what happens is that Yudhishthira goes to Dronacharya and he says that Ashwatthama is dead. Ashwatthama has died. Ashwatthama Hatava. And then the TVs and all these new sort of, they add that little bit of masala that, he said, Naro Kunjara, not your son, it's the elephant. And then Krishna and Arjun blew their conch out. That's nonsense. That's not there in Vyasadev's Mahabharata. What actually happens is he says Ashwatthama is dead. And then because he's so habituated to telling the truth, in his head, he says, not your son, it's the elephant. But that's in his head only. That's all that he doesn't actually say that out loud. Krishna and Arjun don't blow their conch shells. They don't make a massive noise to cover it up. He says plain and outright, Ashwatthama is dead. And so Dronacharya, he thinks, okay, now the time for my departure has come. I can feel that I need to wind up now. And so he pretends on the outside, oh no, how has Ashwatthama died? How has this happened? And then Bhim says, see, now Yudhishthira Maharaj is saying you should give up your war. You go and meditate and give up your life, and there's no point of you living anymore. You started this war because you wanted your 2 cows, and so you didn't teach the Kauravas properly, and like that you're just criticizing. And then Dronacharya comes off the chariot, sits down, and through his own yogic power, because he's a Brahmana in the end, he gives up his life by his own will. And there's only 3 people that know he's given up his life by his own will. Yudhishthira Maharaj, Krishna, and Sanjay, who narrates this to the Dhritarashtra. These are the only 3 people that can see that actually his body is now technically lifeless. And then Drishtadyumna does what his purpose of his life is. And he goes and he sees that there is an unarmed Dronacharya meditating with his eyes closed. And he's chanting some mantras, supposedly. And so he thinks, okay, and he jumps off his chariot, sword in hand. And Arjun's about to stop him. Arjun's crying, no, don't do this. And he just chops the head off Dronacharya, picks up his head and throws it across the battlefield. And the blood is dropping like rain. Small droplets of blood fall on the ground. Because that's the sort of a picturesque death, if you want, where the head flies in the air like that. And so Drishtadyumna, he fulfills the purpose of his life by doing like that. So there's a lot. This is how Dronacharya winds up his pastime, and the reason I mention that story is because Arjun then goes on to start shouting things like, Drishtadyumna, I'm going to kill you today. Yudhishthira, how could you say something like that? Because you've said something like that, you've ended up killing your own guru. I'm now going to make sure that you don't live by the end of the day. And he takes all these fake promises because that's what Kshatriyas do. When they're angry, they just blurt out something because in the moment that emotional reality is there, it's not practical reality. So again, also in our day-to-day lives, when we get angry, we often say some things, and sometimes other people take it seriously. But the important point is, one, just like Yudhishthira Maharaj did, one should control himself, and one should recognize that this is just a moment of anger. And Dronacharya gives up his life ends his his pastimes or activities in this manner. Now, first, other things that we need to talk about. Dronacharya, why did he fight on Kaurava's side? Well, the point that Drona says, Yudhishthira Maharaj at the beginning of the war says, and he goes and takes blessings from everyone. And at that time, Dronacharya says, I give you my blessings. And then Dronacharya says this interesting statement. I became a servant of wealth. And wealth is no one's servant. And if you look at this it makes no sense. If you look at it from our mundane understanding, we won't understand what this is saying. But what he's saying is that because he became so attracted to this one desire, I want to get revenge on Drupada, he ended up, in a sense, causing this whole war and fighting for the Kaurava side. And so now he has ended up giving up his life in the war in this manner. And the other point to realize is this friendship is based on revenge, one-upmanship. You do this and then I'll do this and then you do this. And this sort of friendship is completely futile and it doesn't get them anywhere. And in the end, it leads to the death of Drona, the death of Drupada, and the death of Drishtadyumna, all because they are simply just in this revenge. You do this to me, I'll do that. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. That's the important point. Brahmana's nature is to forgive. So by going in that moment, he went, and because of that thought, he went against his Brahmanical nature and went into a Kshatriya nature. He ended up becoming a very dangerous part of the war. And that's that point about Varnashram, that the Brahmanas should have the Brahminical understanding and they should also apply externally and not use their warfare or Kshatriya qualities wherever they want to, although they might have them. They should be Brahminical. And so that's a very important point to understand. Second thing is that we can take from Dronacharya is that in the end of the day, he is actually Brahmana. Although he's not taught the correct things in a sense to the Kauravas and Pandavas, and although he might have ended up taking part in a war, which is definitely not what Brahmana does. Brahmanas never take part in war, other than there's cases where a sort of Brahmanical family might get part in the war for emergency, but Brahmanas don't take part in a war like this. He is a Brahmana, and this is explained in other parts of his characteristics. And the one that we can mention here is that Dronacharya actually trains Drishtadyumna, or Drishtadyumna is in his ashram, in his gurukul. And Drishtadyumna doesn't directly learn from Drona, actually. He learns from Arjun. Just like, in a college, when one wants to become better themselves, they start tutoring other people. One will teach other people so that they can become better themselves. Dronacharya accepted Drishtadyumna in his ashram, even though Dronacharya knows Drishtadyumna will kill me. This is how Brahmanical he is. This is how forgiving he is. And that's very important to understand from Dronacharya's life, that this quality of Brahmanical nature. So what can we learn from Dronacharya's life? How a correct friendship should not be. This is not the way one should carry out their activities. Because you can put, if you want to word it in such a way, on a material level, because of 2 cows, because he wanted 2 cows, Dronacharya caused the Kurukshetra war. Unknowingly. In the end of the day, this is all an instrument on Krishna's part, but this is the point we need to understand, that when we end up desiring material things, we don't cause ourselves or others around us any bliss, and we only cause misery. The point to understand is, yes, Drupada did do wrong. What Drupada did is wrong. I'm not justifying Drupada's behavior at all. That is completely incorrect. But Dronacharya's desire for these 2 cows and then for revenge acts as a very dangerous catalyst in the warfare and results in misery of many, many people. So one should not have these sort of materialistic desires because they only bring about misery. The desire that one should have is that one tries to perfect and devote this life, especially this human form of life, to the Lord. Another thing that we can learn is the true principle of correct varnashram. When you mix your Kshatriya understanding and the Brahmana understanding, when it's mixed in an incorrect manner, it results in a destructive force. Because Dronacharya, he was in the sense like he had that Kshatriya understanding and he did not use his Brahminical nature where he should have. Instead, he went towards his Kshatriya nature. The incorrect mixture of this result is very destructive. And how can we avoid this incorrect mixing of natures is mentioned by Govind Prabhu very nicely in his class, that this Kshatriya nature should not be curbed. One cannot stop their nature. But what one can do is when one devotes their life to the Lord and one carries out their actions dovetail to the Lord, then the Lord will bring about the correct mentality and understanding. And then Another thing that we can learn from Dronacharya's life is that he also he ended up, killing many soldiers, and ended up also killing Abhimanyu in a very gruesome manner. He also experiences, because of his material desire, this misery. So these are the main points that we can understand. I'd like to finish on one verse about Dronacharya. We're running a little bit. What time is it? Okay, I'll try to finish as quick as possible. But there is in the Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnay by Madhvacharya, he explains that the most powerful person in the Mahabharata, after Lord Krishna, because Lord Krishna doesn't count because he's already God, the most powerful human being in the Mahabharata is not Bhishmadev, it's actually Dronacharya. And this verse is given, Jifagre Chatura Veda Karagre Sasram Danu Ubhayo Drona Samartyam Shapadapi Sharadapi. Jivvagre Chaturoveda. He knew the four Vedas. The tongue was speaking the four Vedas. Karagre Sashranam Dhanu. With his hands, he used to fight with the bow. Ubayo Drona Samyartam. He used to know how to use correctly words and swords, words and weapons. And Shapadapi Sharadapi. He had the power to defeat by curses and mantras, and he also had the power to defeat with weapons or shastra. So he's a very, very powerful character, and his power cannot be underestimated. And you can't just say, "Oh, Dronacharya is a waste character. Look at what he's done; he's completely messed up." That's not at all the correct understanding. We can learn from the mistakes of great people, because from their mistakes we can learn something new. It's not mistakes of ordinary people that we are judging here. So these are the points I'd like to end on for Dronacharya's class. So if anyone has any questions, can we just type them in the chat? We'll wait here. Questions or comments? So next week we will do another Mahabharata character, following on in this series. Same time next week, same place, i.e. your own home, because it's lockdown, and prasadam will be served at home.
Rajkumar Prabhu, Anuradha Mataji, Akila Mataji, Shika Mataji, Purushottam Prabhu. So thank you very much.
We'll give it another minute, because sometimes
for your time and for your encouragement. Appreciate it. Just we'll give one more minute and end the session here. Thank you. Rajkumar Prabhu, thank you.
Purushottam Prabhu's asked a question. What are difference between a bhikshu and a brahmana? Okay, beggar and a brahmana. Just because one goes and begs doesn't make him a brahmana necessarily. And actually, brahmanas don't actually beg themselves, generally, in Vedic society. Brahmana is someone who has the correct understanding of God consciousness and proper God realization. That person is brahmana. And who applies those standards not only in his spiritual life and also in his material life. That person is a brahmana, not one who's just born in a Brahmin family. A bhikshu is someone, although the brahmanas may beg every now and then, generally actually brahmanas, because they are brahmanas themselves, the Lord will provide the food rather than them going huffing to bed. So anyone who begs is bhikshu then necessarily, but brahmana is someone who has this internal correct understanding as well, and correct. Yeah. So one who knows what Brahma is then brahmana. That's the point. Thank you, Naman.
Thank you, Ram Prabhu. And there is Meenakshi Mataji as well, Naman Teja. So thank you, Naman Teja. We are expecting class from you also at some point, like Ameya, all these youngsters, and yeah.
I mean, Purushottam Prabhu, please can you clarify your question? difference between?
I mean,
so what? Maybe is that a Buddhist monk?
yes. Oh, Abhishek Ameya Asmita. Okay, thank you very much, Prabhu. Yeah, we will speak to you, Prabhu, about your question. Everyone is waiting here, but I mean, ascetic bhikshu who practices in Buddhism, who practice dharma in
So a
Buddhism.
Buddhist monk is someone who practices their lifestyle and their teachings and the teachings of Lord Buddha, which is that God is formless and they have this sort of impersonal realization of God. So that's the Brahmana would be someone who has correct God realization, who's realized truly what, not just the Sat and Chit aspects. So I think we've mentioned, you might have heard the example of the sun. The sun, there is the sun globe, the sun rays, and the sun God. So like that, there's different aspects of God realization. One can see the Sat feature, the eternal impersonal feature. When one sees Sat and Chit, then they also see the eternal and knowledgeable aspect as the Paramatma, the localized aspect within the heart. And then when one sees a Sat, Chit, and Ananda, eternal, blissful, and happy, then one will see the Bhagavan realization that God is someone with a form, and he's not just a formless energy, rather. So that's what I'd say for that. Okay, I think that's it.
Yeah. So thank you, Prabhu. Purushottam Prabhu. Yes. Yeah, Buddhist monks, they follow Buddha, and Buddha we know very well from Srimad Bhagavatam and others. His main purpose was non-violence. He appeared at the time when there is violence, when Brahmanas' houses became actually a slaughterhouse. So that time he appeared. So his main principle was non-violence. He rejected Vedas. It's interesting. Buddha rejected Vedas. So it's a slightly different path. But anyway, those follow Buddha, they will achieve whatever they want to achieve. Buddha is tricking them. So Brahmins can be also sometimes, they can be impersonalists also, Brahmins. So Brahmajanati iti Brahmanaha. So one who knows Brahman, the Lord, is called Brahman. But a devotee is different. Is greater than Brahmana, is greater than Bhikshu, is greater than everyone, because a devotee, believes in Krishna, and he thinks of Krishna in his heart forever. Krishna says, if you remember the famous verse from 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Yoginam api sarvesham madgate nantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatama mataha. So there are so many yogis, so many ascetics. Out of all these great yogis and ascetics, the one who thinks of me in their heart constantly, that person is the greatest yogi. So that is Bhakti Yogi. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate. Hare Krishna.
Hare
See you next week. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Appreciate. Hare